Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Melissa and I am with Sew Yours. I am excited to be bringing you a brand new video tutorial all on my latest sewing pattern. Please meet the Sun and Run Tote. This is a sewing pattern that includes two different size totes. You get the Market Tote size and the roomy beach bag size. I've done a separate introductory video that goes over the features of this bag. Check out the description box below. We will be using our vinyl bag mesh that we sell on our website and here in store to make up this bag. But if you do not have vinyl bag mesh, you can certainly make this bag with any materials of choice. Over here, I used a combination of water-resistant canvas and waterproof canvas to make mine. So keep watching to learn how to make your very own Sun and Run tote. Here I've got all of my fabric cut out and laid out like it's going to be on the bag. This is how I like to lay everything out as I'm building my bag. So we'll go over all of the materials here that I have. First up, we're going to go over our top binding piece. This is pattern piece A. You are going to need 2 exterior canvas pieces and 2 lining canvas pieces. I've chosen to go with our printed water resistant canvas for my exterior and my solids of the waterproof canvas, which you can get on our website. I'll put the name on the screen of this print, which is brand new. We just got this shipment in and posted it online for you. And if you like what I have here with this combination, you can purchase this fabric bundle. This is going to be the Market Tote bundle for this bag on our website. I'll put links in the description box below for both the beach bag bundles and the Market Tote bundles that we've put together. So it's going to be everything that you need to make your bag, with the exception of a zipper tape and zipper pull. You'll have to purchase those separately. So we've got the top binding pieces here, and I have done some prep work. We'll go over that later when it comes time when we are making these pieces. Pattern piece B is our front and our back panels. Those are in mesh, so you need one for the front and one for the back. I wanted to point out that if you are working with the vinyl bag mesh that we carry in our shop, the beginning of the roll is going to essentially have a selvage, we can call it. And you can see right here that the color is more concentrated. It's not so much of an open mesh right here. And let me show you on this uncut roll of mesh right here what I'm talking about. So you can see right here, this edge is the selvage edge. We can still use that in our bag and not put it to waste, because that's going to be covered with our top binding piece. So I've designed this pattern so that we use as much as we can of this roll. So that is why I have designed the bag 18 inches wide. Now keep in mind that this particular mesh, the manufacturer markets it as 18 inches wide, but in fact it is 18.5 inches in length. So there is going to be a little bit that we are going to be cutting off. But we can lay our pattern piece on the mesh roll just like this to cut out our first piece of our, let's see, the front and the back panel B piece, like I have done on this one. So that way we can use up the selvage edge, because it's going to be covered by our canvas binding anyways. If you've chosen to do the version with the canvas only instead of the mesh, then what you want to do is you're going to cut one canvas exterior and one canvas lining. This is my little demo piece here that represents the big piece. You're going to put those wrong sides together, which I have done on this piece right here. And then you're going to come in and base stitch along the entire outside of all 4 sides. And you can see here I've done that most of the way here using black thread just so you can see it. I left this open just so you could see that this is wrong sides together. And then you're going to treat this piece as your exterior front, and you'll make a second set for your exterior back. You're going to do that for the front and back panels B. You're also going to do that for pattern piece E, your slip pocket. So if you're doing the mesh, then you're going to have 2 pieces of mesh, or you'll have your combo here that creates 2 pieces. Here I have my slip pocket binding piece. This is pattern piece D. 2 exterior canvas and 2 lining canvas. Again, prepped out, but we'll go over that later. Here is pattern piece C. This is my bottom. I've got 2 exterior and 2 canvas prepped out. Again, we'll go over that later. So that is the exterior and the lining of the bag. Here is pattern piece F. This is my zipper pocket. You will need one of those. I like to cut that out in my exterior fabric, which is my print, because that brings the print inside into the lining of the bag and adds a little bit more color to the bag. You will need to do a non-directional print for this particular piece, unless you're using a print kind of like I have right here that could really pass as a non-directional. And the reason being is we are going to construct this folding it in on itself. Therefore, this portion of the pocket is going to be upside down, and it looks great like this, so I'm perfectly fine with the print being upside down right here. And then we'll be installing our zipper as well. So you will need your zipper, number 3 or number 5, in addition to a zipper pull. For thread, I'm going to be using a combination of thread, and the reason that I'm doing the combo is because my mesh is purple, so I'm going to use the Text 40 thread in the color grape that we sell on our website for the bobbin. And for the upper thread, I'm going to be using our mustard color in the Text 40 thread, again on our website, for when I do my top stitching of my handles onto the mesh right here. So that way the thread blends with the webbing right here, but when you're looking inside of the bag, you're going to see, or hopefully not even see, the thread through the mesh right here, since this is see-through. So keep that in mind also, that you may need to select 2 different color threads for this particular project. That way it's not so noticeable. Here I have my binding. We want to cut 1-inch wide strips of our binding with our waterproof canvas. So I've got that right here. I like to cut this right away. As soon as I unroll my waterproof canvas, I cut 2 long 1-inch wide strips. Now this is more than I really need. I gave you the exact measurements in the pattern on the cutting guide for that, but I like to just keep my strips long, and then when it comes time to bind my sides, my box corner, as well as my zipper pocket, then I'll cut from this. Some additional supplies that you are going to need is a lighter to seal the ends of your webbing, or you could use some fray check. You are definitely going to need some double-sided tape for this project, either 1/8 of an inch wide or 1/4 of an inch wide. We sell this on our website. In addition, we sell these pens as well. So you are going to need a Soline air erasable pen or an air erasable pen of your choice. I like to use this one for whenever I'm working with lighter colored fabrics. And then I like to use my extra fine line chalk pen whenever I am working with anything that has a darker color on it. You're also going to need a metallic pen, so a silver pen of some sorts. It's not an air erasable pen or anything like that, but you can get any kind of basic silver pen from one of your local stores as well. For the mesh, whenever you're working with a darker colored mesh, because we do need to draw a line on this and be able to see it. So I've got my silver pen right here. A brayer is very helpful for this particular project because as we're creating our folds, we are able to crease those folds really well. So I do recommend a brayer for this project, but it's not required. You can go ahead and finger press this if you want. We now sell brayers on our website. And lastly, you're going to need 1.5 inch wide webbing for the Market Tote size, a minimum of 88 inches in length. And for the beach bag, a minimum of 100 inches in length. Alternatively, you can make your own handles as well out of your canvas like I have on this bag. If you're doing that, please note that you will need additional yardage from what is quoted in the fabric requirements for this bag. Also, keep in mind that I always recommend unrolling your canvas and cutting your handles first. That way you have the length. So that's just a little friendly reminder for you for that. That way you don't run out after you've cut out your pattern pieces and then you realize you don't have a full length for your handles. Let's start on our zipper pocket, which is pattern piece F. You need your zipper tape and your zipper pull off to the side. I have pulled my zipper tape apart to create 2 pieces right here. We're going to put this right sides together with one of the short edges here of the zipper pocket. And the zipper tape is going to be a little bit longer, so just let the excess hang off of both sides. Add the other side of the zipper tape to the opposite end of the zipper pocket. Sew down each of these edges at 1/4 inch. Once you have sewn that, all you want to do is turn this right side out, finger press, and you're going to come in and top stitch along this edge at 1/8 inch. I have already done that for this side. So do that for both sides. Next up, let's do a measurement 1 1/2 inches from this sewn or folded edge right here. Grab your quilting ruler and line that up at the 1 1/2 inch mark. Use your air erasable pen to draw a line right here. This is just going to give us a fold line that we're going to fold over in just a moment. Once you have done that, let's add our zipper pull. And our zipper pull has been added. I'm going to trim my zipper tape even with the fabric now. And from here, we're going to look for that line that we drew. It's probably hard for you to see here on camera. And I am just going to come in and crease that on that 1 1/2 inch line. I could also use my brayer just to get that crease a little bit more firm. And from here, we're going to add some clips, clipping this wrong sides together. So you can see in here, that's going to be the inside of our pocket. This pocket is unlined because it is essentially a beach bag or a market tote. It doesn't need to be anything super fancy. We want to keep this as lightweight as possible and also be able to keep it breathable and keep it wipeable and all that. That's why we don't use any kind of lining on this pocket, but that is what it's going to look like at this point. Now you're going to come in on the left side, the top side, and the right side and base stitch that with 1/8 of an inch. The sides and the top is now base stitched into place. I like to also back stitch along my zipper tape just to reinforce it, so I've done that on both sides. You'll need to grab your binding now. Now you can grab the pieces if you've already pre-cut them per the cutting guide. But like I said, I keep mine just like this. So I've got my 2 long strips right here, which is more than I need. But I'm going to grab my binding. And I like to finger press it first. So if you want a guide down the center, you can certainly draw that with your chalk pen or any pen that is going to show up on this side. It's not really necessary. I'm just going to fold this over and finger press it to about the length here of the pocket, and then I'll just stop finger pressing. You could also come in with your brayer and crease the seams more if you'd like. Alright, once we have that, we are going to place along the bottom side of our zipper pocket the binding right here, placing the raw edges of the pocket right in the center fold there. Grab your clips and making sure that that's flush with the side, with the bottom side. I'm going to clip this little thread there. Now you're just going to come in and get that all tucked in there. I will come in and clip this down after I've sewn this on. That's how I like to do it. So I'm just going to bind the left and the right side, and I am going to come in at 1/4 of an inch and sew both sides of my binding on. Got that binding all complete. This one has been sewn on as well, and now it's just time to carefully trim away the excess binding right here along the top without cutting the top edge of your zipper pocket. Now, if you're more comfortable with pre-cutting your binding, you could certainly go ahead and just get that done. So there is my zipper pocket all ready to go. I'm going to add some double-sided tape along the back side right here. I'm going to grab my 1/4 of an inch double-sided tape for this particular piece, but 1/8 of an inch will work just as fine as well. Just add that to the top edge. So here is our zipper, and there is where the double-sided tape is. Now we'll set this aside. Next up, you will want to grab your top binding pieces, which is A, and your slip pocket binding pieces, which is D. So you want both your exteriors and your linings. Pair up one of your exterior canvas pieces and one of your lining canvas pieces, placing those right sides together. And you're going to sew along the top side. So if you're working with a directional print, and this is, like I said, a somewhat directional print right here. This is my top edge of the print. That is the side that we are going to be sewing along. So put those right sides together, clip them, and sew that with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Do the same thing for the slip pocket binding piece. sewing along that top edge of a directional print right there at 3/8 of an inch. I have already done it for this set right here. So you can see this is what my binding is looking like. So let me get that sewn for the other set right here. All right, both sets have now been sewn together. And now I can share with you what I did earlier. This step can be done in the very beginning whenever you are cutting out your fabric pieces, or as I've written it in the pattern, it's going to be at this point. So all I did was I grabbed my quilting ruler and I measured up 1 inch from this bottom raw edge right here with my ruler. Then I placed a strip of double-sided tape just beneath that line that was drawn. So that is where we are at. You're going to do that for both your exterior and your lining pieces, as well as on the slip pocket. So everything's going to have a 1 inch line drawn with the double-sided tape on both sides. Now we are going to grab one of our front panels, which is B, which I have right here, and I'm using the one that has the selvage edge right here and placing that at the top. That way we can cover that up with our top binding piece, which we've already gone over and prepped and sewn. So we're just going to bind the top edge of this. Now if you're working with the exterior canvas and lining canvas and having that base stitched together, you're going to have that piece instead of your mesh. I am going to remove my paper backing from my top binding A piece, and we're going to fold up that long raw edge to meet the line, the 1 inch line that we drew a moment ago, and come in and press that down securely. If you have a brayer, I recommend using that to crease that seam and get that good contact with the double-sided tape. Flip this over and repeat the process for the opposite side. Now one thing I wanted to point out is you want to make sure that when you're doing your folds that both of these edges are meeting up flush with each other. I can see right here that this is off just slightly, and maybe that's just because I didn't draw my line exactly like I did on the other one. So we can use the bottom side, the folded edge, as a reference to make sure that everything is meeting up nicely. So I'm watching the bottom side as I'm folding. And because the waterproof canvas is a little bit thicker, I like to use my brayer kind of as I go, just to get that good contact with the double-sided tape. All right, that is where we are at with this. Now you're going to take this and open it up, kind of finger pressing that center seam and getting those fabrics away from each other in opposite directions. You can use your brayer here again to get a good crisp fold. Grab your double-sided tape. I like using the 1/8 of an inch here, just because when I sew, it's less chance of my needle going through it. But if it does, no problem. We can just wipe our needle off with an alcohol pad. Now I'm going to be placing this tape just beneath the raw edge that's folded right here. And do that for the opposite side. So most of this pattern is kind of like a rinse and repeat. So we do what we do to one side, we do to the other. It's a pretty quick and simple pattern to put together, and it's quite refreshing to make something that's a little bit different and to be able to work with some different materials, like for instance the mesh. So I'm going to get that pressed. You could use your brayer here and get it nice and secured. Now grab your front exterior panel, and it's important that if you are using different fabrics for your front versus your back, that you're working with the front right here, because this is the one where we're not putting the zipper pocket in. So grab your front exterior mesh or your canvas combo, and you're going to grab your top binding piece right here. Now on the roll of vinyl, I consider the right side of the mesh the side that is on the outside of the roll, just like this. And you can generally tell that because it always kind of wants to curl in on itself. And mine is still kind of doing that even though I had it laying flat all day. So for me, I'm just considering this the exterior of my mesh. But when you look at it, you really can't tell that there's a difference. I just like to do it that way. That's why I am pointing it out to you. So with that in mind, this being my exterior front, this is going to be the exterior of my binding, so the outside of my bag. That's how I want it to be. So I'm going to line it up like that. I'm going to flip this over, And let me work this way. I like to take that raw edge of the mesh or your canvas, and you're gonna butt that right up into where that seam is right here, and then have that seam allowance kind of laying over on itself. So what we'll do is we'll remove our paper backing just from this one side right here, and slowly work on getting that tucked up underneath there. And pressing down the double-sided tape as we go. So you can see where the seam is, the sewn edge right here. So I'm just getting that mesh to line up with that. Give it a good press. Let's take a look at it from this side so you can see where we're at. So now we just want to remove the paper backing from this side. And we're gonna flip this around to bind the edge. So as I am doing my binding, I'm looking at the folded edge right here, and through the mesh I can see the binding on this side. So I'm just gonna line all of those up, kind of focusing there to start with, so that everything is nice and even. And once I kind of get a little section done, I will crease the top edge. Here's what the outside looks like, and this is what the inside of the bag is going to look like. You can add some clips just to make sure that the binding isn't going to come off. So I just add a few here. And you're going to take this over to your sewing machine. You're going to first sew along this open side, so this bottom folded side, at 1/8 of an inch. And then you're going to come in along the top edge right here and sew that with 1/8 of an inch. Keep in mind your thread colors when you're sewing. So for this particular bag, I could go either way. I could do the purple thread, or I can do the mustard color thread for both my upper and my lowers. And I think I'm going to do that just for simplicity's sake, but I could have my grape thread on the upper and I could do my mustard on my bobbin. So either way is going to work. My binding is now on my front panel, so we can set that aside. Grab your back panel as well as your previously constructed zipper pocket, and I have already removed the paper backing from the wrong side of the zipper pocket and placed this down, centering it 1 inch down from the top edge. Now remember how I said that I consider there to be a right side and a wrong side of the mesh? Just my personal preference, just to keep everything consistent. So this is going to be the exterior back side, and this is going to be the lining side of my mesh. So that is where I placed my zipper pocket. So if you're working with the canvas only version right here, your fabric is going to be facing lining side up, and you'll be placing your zipper pocket on top of the lining side. So just find your center of your mesh or your canvas panel and the center of your pocket, measure down 1 inch. So I usually just like to line up my quilting ruler right here, and I lay down my zipper pocket, pressing it down to secure that double-sided tape into place. Then come over to your sewing machine and sew along this edge at 1/8 of an inch. My zipper pocket is now secured to my mesh. The next step is to do the same exact thing that we did with the remaining top binding piece, which I have right here. And we are going to bind the top edge of the back mesh piece right here. So let's just do the same exact thing. I'm not going to bother showing you on camera because it's the same exact process that we just did. There is my back panel all sewn. So I've got the front and the back finished. Next up, you want to grab your slip pocket E pieces as well as your slip pocket binding pieces that we already prepared earlier. And this is going to be the exact same process to bind our slip pockets, just like we did our back and our front panels. So just repeat the same process. Okay, my slip pockets are now bound. Now, one thing I just noticed as I was working through the next step is that my slip pocket looked a little bit big. And I don't know how I did this, but I cut it a little bit too large. It's always good to cut it larger than it is smaller. So I am just going to trim this down to the proper height. My slip pockets are now the appropriate height. So we want to find the bottom centers of our slip pockets. So just fold those together and use your scissors to cut a little notch to mark out your centers. You're going to do the same thing for your front and your back panels as well. And I've already done this one. And I believe I did my back as well, so I've got my little notches there. So grab your front panel and one of your slip pockets, match up the bottom centers and clip this into place. Now you are going to take this over to your sewing machine, sew down the left, the bottom, and the right sides. I like to backstitch well along the top edge right here, since this is a stress point because you will be going in and out of the pocket, so make sure you do that. I also recommend that you use a thread color that matches your mesh here. Now if you're using the canvas only version, then you might want to change your bobbin to a thread color that matches your lining, and then a thread color that matches your exterior. With the power of filming, I have already sewn this on. So I used the purple thread to get that sewn on. I also sewed it on the back panel as well. You want to make sure that you flip your zipper pocket out of the way when you are sewing on your slip pocket. Next up, we are going to prep our webbing straps. If you are making your own straps, then feel free to go ahead and get that done right now. That is not included in the instructions in the pattern, but you can certainly make your 1.5 inch wide straps if you choose to do so. And then you're going to follow along just like we are doing here. So I've got my two 44-inch pieces of webbing to create both of my handles. Or if you're doing the beach bag, you want your two 50-inch pieces, or longer if you want a longer handle on yours. Let's work with one of them just to start. I am going to find the center of my webbing by folding this in half and using my air erasable pen just to make a little marking right here at the center. From here, I'm going to get my quilting ruler and I am going to measure 3.5 inches from either side of the center mark and make a marking. So there is my center mark, 3.5 inches from the center mark on both sides. I've got my marks right there. What we're going to do now is we are going to fold this in half lengthwise. So essentially this is my wrong side of my webbing. This is my right side of my webbing, if your webbing does have a right and a wrong side. Clip this in half just between the markings that you made. So in total it's going to be 7 inches. Okay, so here's the first marking, and here is the second marking. That is 7-inch span right here. We are going to bring this over to our sewing machine, and we're going to begin stitching along this line right here. And I like to triple stitch. So I start my machine, I sew here, I back stitch, I go back again, and then along this open end, we're going to sew at 1/8 of an inch, pivot, and come back along this line right here, triple stitching as well to make sure that that is nice and secure on the edges. My handle is now sewn. So this is what it looks like, and we will repeat the same process for the remaining handle. Both handles have now been prepped, so I'm going to set this one aside for the moment. Grab your front panel right here with your binding and your slip pocket, and grab your quilting ruler. We are going to measure in 3 3/4 from the outside edge for the Market Tote, or if you're making the beach bag, you're going to measure in 5 3/4 of an inch with your quilting ruler. So align your quilting ruler with that outside edge at 3 3/4 or 5 3/4. So here's mine at 3 3/4 because I'm doing the Market Tote. You are going to line up the outside edge of your webbing right here with your ruler. Put a couple of clips here along the bottom side, and then you are going to add a couple of clips along the top side. So let me remove my ruler. And we don't really want to use any double-sided tape here, especially when we are working with a mesh and if it is a beach bag, because if you are taking this to the beach and you've got double-sided tape, that sand is going to go ahead and get all stuck along the back side of the bag here. So don't use double-sided tape when you're especially using the mesh. You could certainly get away with using it if you want to, if you're just doing the canvas only version. But these clips right here seem to keep everything in place, no problem at all. Our goal is to cover up the raw edge here of our slip pocket with the webbing. So once I've got the one side secured, I'm going to bring this around and make sure that my handle is not twisted, and I am going to do the same thing for the opposite side. And my goodness, I love this combo so much. So as a reminder, you can get this bundle on our website at sewyours.com. We have market bundles and we also have the beach bag bundles available. All you're going to need to do is add your own zipper tape and zipper pull. And here is what the top of the handle looks like right here. So take this over to your sewing machine and you are going to sew along this side right here at 1/8 of an inch, stopping 1 inch away from the top edge. And I usually forget to do this when before I clip everything into place, but I'm just going to grab my ruler and my air erasable pen just to kind of guide me when I'm at my sewing machine as to where 1 inch away is from the top edge. Right there. So along the left side, across here at the 1 inch mark away from the top edge. I like to do another triple stitch, so I sew this way, I go back, and then I go back again, and then sew down the right side, and then I'll just close it off here at the bottom as well. If you want, you can do a rectangle with an X in there. That's completely up to you. I did that, I think, on my first version, and I just didn't like the look of it. I like it cleaner, so that's why I just do a triple stitch here. And then you'll do the same thing on this side. Now you want to keep in mind your thread colors. So I'm using the mustard colored webbing here, so I'm going to use my mustard threading on the upper part of my sewing machine. And because my mesh is the grape or the purple color, I am going to use the grape thread in my bobbin. Now here's something that I am probably going to do a little different on this one that I didn't do on the last or on past ones, is because I'm using grape thread right here, it's going to be visible. Let me grab a bag to show you an example of what happened when I did that on another bag. Right, for this particular bag, because I had my lining be the lighter color waterproof canvas, and then I had the darker waterproof canvas here, I had the thread matching the lighter color but not the darker color. Now if it doesn't bother you at all right here the way it is, then you can keep the same thread color, but I think for this particular one I feel like I'm going to change that out midway of sewing. So I'm going to have my grape thread on the bobbin up to this point, and I'll backstitch and stop sewing right here, and then I am going to swap it out and add in my mustard colored thread for this portion, so that way it blends in here, and then do the same thing here. So that's how I'm going to do mine, but you can do yours however you want. Okay, my handles are now sewn to the front panel, as you can see right here. Funny story is right after I filmed the last clip, I got called over to the shop and got distracted, came back, started sewing, and realized I completely forgot to change out my bobbin like I said I was going to do. So it is sewn with the mustard color bobbin. I did notice it when I got to this point, and then I said, well, I'm not going to sit here and try to pick all of this out. I don't like to pick stitches if I don't have to. I'm lazy, I guess, like that. So I just went with it. It's not that bad, actually. You just mostly see it right along here when it's the purple against the purple. So we're going with that for the whole entire bag. So I've got my front panel sewn with the handle, and I've already done my back as well. So when you are sewing on the back panel, you need to make sure you flip that zipper pocket out of the way as you are sewing everything into place. So that is where we are at with the front and the back panel. So we are getting along the home stretch right here, so we can set these aside and we are going to work on our bottom. Grab both your exterior bottom pieces as well as your lining bottom pieces. Disregard the double-sided tape for the moment. We'll go over that in just a moment. We are going to work with the exterior first, so just put the lining ones aside for the moment. And what we need to do is we are going to create a center seam here between these two pieces. Now you may be asking, why did you have me cut two pieces instead of one big piece and joining it down the center? And the reason being is if I had this in one big piece and you wanted to use a directional print, we would have the bag be upside down on one side when it wraps around. So let me show you on this particular one. So when I originally designed this pattern, I had it designed so that there was no center bottom seam, like you can see on this particular one. And I also had it designed so that on the top here, this was all done in one continuous piece. But then I realized that, oh, if we want to use a directional print and we want to wrap it around, then that is going to be upside down on the inside. And I didn't like that. So that's why I decided to make these into two separate pieces, in addition to the bottom being two separate pieces, to allow you that flexibility of using a directional print. So, with that in mind, we are going to create one piece for the lining and one piece for the exterior. So to do that, we are going to grab the two exterior pieces, placing those right sides together. Clip this into place, and we are going to sew this at 3/8 of an inch. Once you sew that together with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, you are going to open this, press your seam with your fingers, use your brayer if you'd like. And then you're going to come in and open up the seam allowance to opposite directions. So I just finger press that. Flip this over, and you are going to take this over to your sewing machine, sew down the left and the right side of the center seam with a top stitch of 1/8 of an inch. I have already done this on my lining pieces right here. So I've sewn down both sides, and you can better see it right here how the seam allowance is open in opposite directions. So get that done for your exterior and do the same thing for your lining. Once you have sewn your exterior bottom pieces and your lining bottom pieces together, we are going to flip this over so that it is wrong side up. Draw a line 1 inch in from this edge as well as the opposite edge, and just beneath each line drawn you're going to add a strip of double-sided tape like I have done on this one right here. Same process like we did with the top binding and the slip pocket binding. So we're going to remove the paper backing here and fold up the raw edge to meet the line that we drew. Once you have folded those edges over, grab your double-sided tape, and just like with our top binding and slip pocket binding, you are going to apply the tape right next to that raw edge. And I'm just going to work on the one side for the moment here with the double-sided tape. My tape seems to be pulling up at the moment on this, so I'm going to add a few clips just to keep it down. I'm going to put this aside, grab your front panel, grab your quilting ruler, and you are going to measure up 1/2 of an inch from the bottom raw edge. So place your ruler down, and if you're using darker mesh, use your silver pen now to draw a line. I usually just skip the webbing. I don't need to really draw over the webbing. If you have a lighter colored mesh, you could use your sew line pen. So I've already done that with my pen. You can see it definitely here in the middle. It might be harder for you to see along the sides, but I did draw that line. I am going to remove the paper backing from the double-sided tape right here, and I'm going to take that folded edge and place it along that line that I just drew. Once you have placed that, you're going to flip this over. And you can also draw a second line if you wish along this edge at 1/2 of an inch. But I can just use the mesh as a guide right here because I can see right through the mesh and see my backside. If you're working on canvas only, then yes, you're going to need to go ahead and draw your line 1/2 of an inch away from the bottom edge. Then you are going to do the same thing now with your lining piece. So we'll remove the paper backing, fold up this edge, add some double-sided tape to that, and we're going to place this on top of the exterior bottom piece. So I'll show you how that goes in just a moment. Now we are going to put wrong sides together, and we're going to place that at the 1/2 of an inch line drawn, or in this case, since I can see right through, I am just following along with the exterior, the way that that has been placed. I can see right through the mesh. Once you have that secured into place, we are going to take this over to our sewing machine, sew along the folded edge right here at 1/8 of an inch. Then we will do a second row of stitching 1/8 of an inch away from the first row of stitching. A little tip for you, because this can get very big, especially when you are working with the beach bag, is you can kind of roll this up like a burrito. So I tuck my handles in, and then I'm just rolling this up. I'm going to put a clip on both sides. And I do the same thing for the opposite side, and this is going to make it much easier to maneuver underneath your sewing machine. And you can still see where we need to do our sewing. I've got my double row of stitching all complete on this side. Now it's the same process to do the opposite side. So grab your back panel right here, making sure that you flip that zipper pocket up and out of the way. Flip out your lining out of the way here, and since we already folded over the raw edge right here, all I need to do is add my double-sided tape to this outside edge. Now we're going to top stitch along this side right here. I see that I can see my lining a little bit more than I can see the exterior, so I'm going to make an adjustment to that, and then I'll go ahead and get my top stitching done. So 2 rows of top stitching here. Fold this up like a burrito to get it underneath your sewing machine. And top stitch 2 times. Both the front and the back panel are now sewn to the bottom panel. So here is where I'm at. One additional step that I took that I didn't tell you about just yet is I came in and I base stitched along these edges right here to keep both the exterior and the lining in place. So I've already done that. Next up, we just need to bring right sides together. We want to first match up the top binding pieces right here where the seams come together and clip it into place. And get the top edge lined up. And I will worry about all the loose threads later. Then come in and match up where the bottom meets the mesh and clip that into place. And repeat the same thing for the opposite side. Take this over to your sewing machine, sew down the left side and the right side at 3/8 of an inch. My sides are sewn. Midway of sewing, I decided to do a thread color swap, so I used my mustard color thread along these areas where the mustard is, and then I swapped out and did my purple along, or I should say the grape along the purple webbing right here, or webbing, I mean mesh. From here, we need to add our binding, so let me grab my binding piece. And we are going to place our binding 3/4 of an inch up from the bottom edge right here. I don't want to start my binding all the way at the bottom, because if I do that, then it's going to make my box corners even bulkier. So I am just measuring in measuring up 3/4 of an inch from that bottom edge to know where to place my binding. Finger press your binding. Gotta clip this off right here. So finger press your binding like we did on the pocket, just to get a good center seam going. And start it 3/4 of an inch away. Wrap that around. I'm just gonna flip this over so I can see this better. Now I have this bag labeled as a beginner, and you might be thinking, well, why are you doing a beginner bag with binding? Honestly, this binding is really easy because it's not too thick, especially where the mesh is, and when you're using waterproof canvas as binding, it's just really easy to use. So I think any beginner is going to be able to make this bag no problem. All right, so we've got that sewn, or excuse me, clipped into place. So I'm going to sew this at 1/4 of an inch. Then I will trim off my binding even with the top of the bag and repeat this for the opposite side. My sides are now bound. Now we need to box our corners. So all we need to do is match up the center bottom seam with the side seams. I like to put my hand inside the bag, get it all opened up here, and match up those seams. Now I like to just take the excess here of the seam allowance and just push it off to one side. Repeat for the opposite side and sew this with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So do that for both your boxed corners. My corners are boxed. I've already folded over my binding, so I've cut these per the length and the pattern just to show you how you're going to place these on the box corners. So what I do with these is I want some overhang on both sides, and I'll trim that down later. So I just kind of start it here in the middle. I just kind of eyeball it just so I have enough extra on the edges. Sew this with a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Now that that's sewn on, we want to trim this off. So I carefully like to trim mine like one layer at a time. So I'm trimming it flush with the bag itself. So it's not a straight, it's an angle, just like the bag's angled right here. And there's just a hair extra. You can trim it down even more if you want. But once you turn this bag right side out, it's perfectly fine the way that it is. I'm so excited to turn this right side out and see the completed bag. These colors are absolutely stunning together. And this is going to be my bag. I have been loving carrying the Market Totes as well as the beach bags to and from work because they hold so much. They're just handy to have. So let's get this beautiful bag turned right side out. Get those corners poked out really well. I also like to kind of roll the seams with my fingers, especially with this canvas. Kind of crease it. You can also kind of crease along this edge to kind of give it a defined bottom. This bag has a nice wide base so that you can load it up with a bunch of groceries if you want. And the other thing that I like to do is I like to roll out my side seams as well and kind of give them a little finger press. Just encourage them to be sitting outwards instead of trying to go inside. So take the time to get your seams looking good because it's going to make a big difference in the overall look of the bag. All right, here is my Sun Run Tote, the Market Tote size. Let me show you what she looks like on my shoulder in just a moment. Here is our lining. So nice, bright, cheerful lining. I am ready to head out to the market with my Sun Run Tote. I had so much fun sewing along with you guys today. I can't wait to see your completed Sun Run Totes. Please stop by our Facebook group to share photos and get inspiration for your Sun Run Tote. Shop Market Tote bundles and beach bag bundles on our website at sewyours.com, in addition to picking up rolls of the vinyl bag mesh. Thank you so much for watching. Now that I've sewn mine, it's time to sew yours.